Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org. This is PBS Reno Arts. I'm Dave Santina in studio at PBS Reno, where I have Ryan Costella and Rod Hearn in the studio talking about a brand new staged reading called Democracy Suicide, which performs at the theater on Keystone Avenue in Reno on Sunday, October 27th, 2 p.m. and 7 p.m., and then Friday, November 1st at 7:30 p.m. Did I get that right?
Yes.
It's a lot to read. I got it right. That makes me feel better. So, Ryan, I have known you for many years. Truth be told, all full disclosure and all of that, we are friends, but
we go way back.
The reason that I wanted to talk about this show is that this came entirely out of your mind, out of your life experience, and you are not a playwright before now.
No, definitely not.
So you've created a show that, Rod, you will be performing in as one of a cast of 4, and it's as timely as can be because we're coming up on an election, and this is motivated by your experience in life and your desire to help people, to create sort of energy for people to think and reason and make choices and not just absorb what comes flying at them. Can you just talk about where this came from?
Sure. Well, thanks for having us on, Dave.
Of course.
It's always good to be with you. You know, during the pandemic, I think a lot of us really just struggled through that time, processing all of it. I certainly didn't expect for that to be something we all lived through. And then as our politics seemed to intensify so amazingly, I've always been a civically active person. I used to work on Capitol Hill. I know what bipartisanship looks like. I know what civic involvement looks like, and where we have arrived is so foreign. I'm not a professional writer, but I majored in English, and I've always been someone who tends to write prose. I like to journal. I like to process things that way. And I found myself trying to contemplate just where the world has gone and how extreme things have gotten on all sides. And the prose writing just wasn't cutting it. It wasn't capturing the essence of what I was feeling, what I know my family was feeling, and what others were feeling. And so I really just kept iterating and distilling it. And, you know, piles and piles of paper started to distill down into something that felt a little more lyrical and a little more poetic. And then after continuing to refine it really just spilled out into poetry. And the pieces that I was most satisfied with and I felt really hit the mark came together into a collection that I called Democracy Suicide. And
I want to point out this is a nonpartisan program. This play, I will call it a play, I guess we could call it. It's being read with a table reading, but it's performed on stage and can be performed in any fashion. It is intentionally nonpartisan.
It's really trying to look at, take a completely different perspective than what we're used to. Right now, we're very used to the red versus blue war. And I mean, even referring to each other as enemies. Literally right now, that's what's happening. Right versus left, red versus blue. As I processed it, I started to see a different vantage point. And I think what the piece does is it rises above that and starts to say, especially when we get to the more extreme aspects, it starts to feel evil. It starts to feel crazy. And, you know, it's one thing to be convicted. It's a whole other thing to be crazy. And this happens on both sides. It's not just one side or the other. And so what emerged was this dichotomy between reason and tyranny. And so the piece really explores reason and its interaction with right and left and what we would all probably consider normalcy, And then it explores the trend and the realities that have led us to actually depart from reason and embrace tyranny and more extremism, which I believe threatens democracy's existence.
Thus the title.
That's the title.
Right.
And I think the thesis of the piece is ultimately it's all a choice. We are not victims in this. Every single one of us either plays a role or doesn't play a role in enabling that or fixing it.
And so I remember, again, we've known each other for years. And in fact, I think I met you in this same studio when you came in to do a video. You were trying to prepare for you were trying to audition for a TED Talk, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
And so you've always been eloquent. And so the way you wrote, I was able to read some of this with a group of people at your house. You invited a group in for a introduction to this.
Yes.
And so a group of people all sat around different parts of your house, reading different poems and coming back together and talking about them. And, I, at that time, could not have imagined that we would be here now with this stage performance. And this is not the first this has now happened. This has been performed in Tucson and in Los Angeles, right?
It's been performed professionally twice in Los Angeles and will be staged in about a week in Tucson.
Oh, okay. So in LA before and then upcoming in Tucson. So professional productions have come out of this. How does that make you feel, having sat in your living room with your friends reading your poetry, and now this is happening?
It's fascinating. I mean, I'm very glad that it seems to be growing and having an impact. That's my key hope. I intended originally just to share it as a poetry collection, and I thought that was an interesting way to talk about politics and talk about extremism and through poetry. That's not the normal way we hear about those things.
Right.
And during the poetry table you spoke of, someone said, "Can we hear this rather than read it? Could we hear it out loud? Could we get people together and hear it out loud?" And so my wife, Anna, who's very connected in the theater community here, arranged for us to go to the Bruca Theater. And we had probably 36 people convene and to hear it out loud. And my wife also said very genuinely, "I love your voice, Ryan, but it would be really nice to have some other voices share in the reading so that it's not too monotonous." And so after she said that, I kind of studied the piece. And at the time, right, left, reason, and tyranny weren't characters or archetypes. But her prompt led me to say, well, if I had to pick 4 voices, those would be the ones. And so we invited 4 people. I was one of them. To read the series of pieces in a particular sequence.
So you have the characters of reason and tyranny, and then right and left.
Yes.
That's what you settled on that to tell the story.
And then we presented it at Bruca Theater November 7th, a year ahead of this year's election. And what was really just a reading had a very profound impact on the audience. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of contemplation. It reached people at a depth I certainly was very surprised by. And from there, long story short, the feedback and my own thinking was this needs to live on a stage. We need lighting. We need interaction between these archetypes and these characters. What could that be? And so it has grown, and we in the spring presented it professionally in LA, which was a huge success. And adding all those elements really, really helped bring the words to life, and it was very powerful. And we continue to iterate the script and the piece, and I'm so excited to be sharing it here in the Reno community where it was born.
That's beautiful. And now, presenting it here, you need performers. So here's Rod across the table.
Real talent.
Real talent.
Well,
Real
we'll
talent.
see. We'll
Right.
see.
Right. So you need to create a show here. And so how did you get connected to Rod?
Well, Rod is a family friend.
You've known
Rod
each
for
other
a long
before.
time, and I've also seen Rod perform. I mean, he's very famous in the Northern Nevada scene.
Oh, geez.
No, but really, I mean, he's extremely talented and,
Yes.
and also leads the Damani Ranch Performing Arts program.
Right, and Damani Ranch, Rod, is the signature academy for performing arts in this community.
It is.
So that immediately gives you credibility because you're leading that. So that tells us a lot.
Well, it also provides opportunity, I think, because that's how I kind of look at this, because this is a piece that's not like anything I've done in my life.
Right. So you're playing a character, but your character is reason. How do you, what is your character? How do you describe the character?
Well, really, I think there's a lot of nuanced thinking that is behind all of the words. And I don't feel like reason is fitting just in one box. I think there are a lot of things I say that people from all over the political continuum are going to identify with. I don't think that my dialogue in particular reflects any one particular point of view. I think there's a lot in there for people to kind of listen to. And I think that's true for a lot of the other characters. I was just rereading it again. I just came off a vacation, and I was looking at Tyranny's lines, and I thought, I mean, for myself as an actor, tyranny is like my go-to. Like that's where I live. And so when you said reason, I thought, I'm going to take a different look at this. But I was looking again at tyranny, and I thought, gosh, there are things in there that I hear and that I know and that people I love and care about are very much aligned with that. But I think there's less care today to just accept people and talk with people and learn. There's not curiosity-based discussion. There's, like you said, like enemies and hatred. And that's kind of what drives my participation, is to kind of dig deep into that. And hopefully that'll resonate with other people in a similar way.
Yeah. So then when you accepted this, I imagine you probably were integral to finding the other actors to perform the other three roles.
Well, I did find a few people and suggested them, and it seems like it's going to work out really great. They're all people with whom I've acted, but not all of us ever in the same show. So I have connections with them. Some of them have connections without me. But this will be the first time I think the four of us are involved in a project together.
Nice. So who are you working with?
We're working with Bradford Ka'ai, with whom I've done lots of shows, and he's a local theater arts teacher. And he's involved Moira Bengochia from a lot of local community theater, but most recently I performed with her at Reno Little Theater last April. And Jessica Johnson, who is a former student of mine, and she also is really active in the local theater community as well.
So I recently saw Bradford Ka'ai in a support group for men at Reno Little Theater, and thought it was a powerful program, a great show. And so along with you, I've seen him in many things over the years. So a familiar face to those who are used to seeing local theater. And I think it's exciting to imagine how this will play. This is a reading, a table reading, a live stage reading, and a cast talkback. That's how it's described. So how does that work versus your traditional, memorized lines performing a show?
Right. So I think in, more conventional theater arenas, we prepare our material, we perform it, and then we go home. And usually once during the run, there's a talkback, and the actors stay afterwards with the director, and sometimes an authority in some way, someone who's kind of a specialist if there's a topical aspect of the play that we maybe want to speak to. And we just kind of finish the play, and actors sit down in front of the audience, and those who want to stay, and they ask questions, or they make comments, or they talk about how the show might have reverberated with them or what resonated with the show. So that's usually a one-off thing, and not such an integrated part of the experience, I think. So this kind of makes it stand out a little different from that.
Yeah, because all three performances will have that talk back afterward, right? I mean, and that is, it sounds to me like, Ryan, your dream would be for everyone to stick around and be invested at that point and want to talk.
I think there's, certainly there's no pressure for anyone to have to participate.
Sure.
I do think we've experienced in the other shows that have happened. In LA, we just did one in September, and with a professional cast and director and the whole 9 yards. And we offered the talkback, and they invited me to participate. And what was fascinating was the entire audience stayed. It was some extremely deep, profound conversation, emotional conversation. And people were sharing the power of the art to invite them to listen and recognize I don't normally listen. Tears around recognizing the piece gives, color to the Thanksgiving table that our family no longer has. And then also inspires me in what I can do to shift that context. And so, as well as the curiosity around, the actors and participating in the piece and saying things that are provocative and challenging and embodying concepts that are hard. And so there's always a curiosity with the artists as well.
Yeah. So Rod, you're reading this, you're performing it. Do you find it affecting you? Do you find yourself thinking, hadn't considered that, or that's a point of view that I understand better because I'm putting myself into this.
Yeah, for sure. And which is actually a framework that exists with every character in every play. Like
that makes sense.
Think about what resonates with me, what is foreign to me, but I'm going to have to find a way in, in order to play a character truthfully in these imagined circumstances that an audience has come to witness. So
right.
In that way, I think it's very much the same. I think the difference for me compared to my roles in other plays is that, unlike Ryan, I don't come to this with a big history of civic responsibility and duty and being active in that sort of realm. To me, I think one of the most exciting things about new work is for playwrights to be able to hear their work, hopefully once, but maybe more with different groups of people, because you get to kind of fine tune things along the way. So I think that part of it is really exciting. I had the pleasure to participate in a new play reading a little over a month ago at another local theater, and it was well attended. There were lots of great actors. None of us had all worked together in the same project again, so that's always really fulfilling for us. But at the end, there was also a talkback to get some feedback from the audience. So in their case, it wasn't necessarily as connected to content like this, but more like, I had a question about this. How did we get from this scenario to this one? Because sometimes the writer has it, and in a revision, it went away somewhere.
Okay,
but
yeah.
in their brain, it's clear.
Well, and a lot of times I see that here, even with the kind of work that we do here making television.
Sure.
The producer knows everything about the story they're telling, and occasionally fills the gap in their mind without actually putting it on the program. And somebody watches it and says, "Wait a minute, why are you even in this location?" And we realize that happened to us once on a program. We realized we didn't ever say why we were here. We were just in a place, and so we had recorded that with a person who was guiding us through this location, but we actually hadn't put it in the show.
Right.
So we said, that's a great point. Let's go put that in the show so people actually know what this is about. And those little moments, that they can make or break an audience's understanding and then ultimately your satisfaction with the work.
Sure.
Well, and this show, a year ago, what you witnessed, this is very different. It's the same content, but the form it's taken in a script has been iterated a few times after seeing it and hearing it and witnessing it and realizing if we arrange this a little differently or created more interplay between these archetypes, this would tell a better story. It would build a stronger energy. And so what we've got now has already been iterated, and I'm sure we'll keep learning. And good art, especially in this form, I hope keeps growing and evolving.
So do you get together and going forward now, this is coming up in just a few days, do you have rehearsals like a regular stage play where you go through this and then maybe make adjustments, or are the words and they don't change?
I don't know that there's any revision process in mind right now, right? That isn't my impression. And so we're all kind of working on our own roles separately and are going to come together for a read before we do the read, in front of an audience, just so we can kind of, have an opportunity to hear each other's rhythms and maybe look for opportunity for reaction that you don't get by yourself.
Right,
And so,
right.
I think that's more with this kind of a read what we're looking at, because this isn't a fully realized staged
Right.
production. If it were, then we'd be deep in rehearsals.
The version in Tucson, for example, totally different scenario. They've been working on this since summer.
That's why
they're all off book.
That's why I thought
Yeah.
it had already performed, because I remember reading some of your social media posts about the work in Tucson, and I had the impression that it had happened already.
Yeah.
Here, that's just the prep process. The preparation is so intense that it takes months to do it right.
It does. And also there's value in hearing it in whatever form. And especially now, my sense was we don't have a full-blown production at this stage here, but we do have a great script. We have we were so blessed to have the talent of Rod and the rest of the group. And it's such an important time. Let's provide some space for this community to contemplate ahead of a really big moment in our civic history. And I hope folks take the opportunity to enjoy it and see how it affects them. And ultimately, I think it will help folks look in the mirror and assess how they contribute in good ways or not good ways to where we go.
Right. And maybe help people to get a little bit prepared to handle whatever comes of the election itself, and maybe be able to understand if it's not what they wanted, why that maybe isn't the end of the world, and maybe there are other people who are worth talking to about why they thought the way they thought, and why they're maybe happy with the result that somebody else isn't happy with. I think that, as you talk about it, people don't listen, they don't talk, they just talk at each other, they don't talk to each other. And this is the kind of work that can help inspire people to take a second and maybe listen and maybe ask a question rather than tell you what to think. I would hope.
Amen.
I think one of the things that is a strength about an experience like this is that it helps kind of cut through a lot of noise. There's so much crazy noise right now, and it's not stopping right now, and it's not stopping next week. But I think it gives people an opportunity to go into a dark theater and be quiet and be present with the intent to listen. And I think that is largely absent. And I think, algorithms provide us all with mostly what we want to hear.
Right.
And so it's reinforcing instead of, the intention to see and listen and understand, I think is often absent.
One audience member in our recent show in LA, he said in the talk back, this piece really pissed me off.
Really?
Really made me uncomfortable. And because we're in a performance of live theater, I can't get up, I can't swipe you. And I had to sit here and then listen to the piece, probably do the same to the other side. And then I have had this realization sitting here, I'm the one choosing not to listen. I'm the one choosing and behaving in a way that is actually not helpful. And this really brought that forward. But if I wasn't forced to sit and listen and be open through this medium, I don't think I would have had that realization.
That's got to feel so good to hear that. As the person who wrote this,
I think it's powerful. I think my hope is that this piece, and as I believe any good art has the power to, is to reach people within themselves. Change happens from within. And so much of what we hear today is external to us, and it's symptom-based. And I think a lot of the change that we need to see for this country to really move forward, regardless of who's elected, is that we look within ourselves and own the changes we want to see. And we model the community and the environment that we believe in. And ideally not at the expense of others, but with others.
Well said. Well said. So, Rod, are you going to bring or encourage any of your students to come to these performances? I know you often bring students to opening nights. I've seen you at many of them with a crowd of kids, and some of them very enthusiastic about the goings on.
Are. Yeah.
So, is this an opportunity to engage some of the students?
For sure. I generally tell students about everything going on around our community and invite them to go see things. Many times, like you said, I take them to go see some things. And, like all of that, I'll put the poster up where all of our posters go and talk about the show a little bit and sell it. And, with all shows, I tell them, if this is your thing, go see it. If it's not your thing, don't go see it. Like, that's kind of how I approach it. And so that way they can ask me questions, if they have any concerns. We see lots and lots of different kinds of things. And generally kids are quite curious. And like you said, the high school theater audience is really enthusiastic. They're an
Yes,
audience
they are.
unlike others.
I have to say, there are moments where I question the choice to bring them, but generally it's fun to be in a crowd like that because they're having a great time.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what it feels like if you're on stage and you've got a crowd like that. That's got to really pump you up.
Yeah.
So it's a good choice, I think. Well, I hope some of them come, and I hope honestly some of the parents come. The families, generally the adults are the ones who need it the most. I think the opportunity to hear in that environment, to get some more people upset and then happy, and recognize their own involvement and their own part in all of this, and then decide what to do about it, right? How to be the change, right? That's the classic, be the change you want to make in the world. I think this is your being the change by making this. So I appreciate you coming in and talking about it. This has been wonderful. Thank you both. Democracy Suicide performs at the Theater on Keystone Avenue in Reno on Sunday, October 27th, 2 p.m. and 7 p.m., and then Friday, November 1st at 7:30 p.m. I'm going to wrap up real quick with a little shameless plugs for PBS Reno content. Watch Artifacts on PBS Reno via broadcast or stream on pbsreno.org or the PBS app or on the PBS Reno YouTube channel. Also, please read Art Views on pbsreno.org. I want to ask if you have any questions, maybe a comment or a suggestion. Did this program mean anything to you? Did it make you think? I hope so. Send any questions, any comments to me at podcasts@pbsreno.org. And that includes negative. I'm not all looking for praise. I want you to tell me the truth about what you think. Real criticism is valuable, as artists know. Performers they want the real criticism. Don't just be nasty for no reason. Okay. My thanks to Ryan Costella and Rod Hearn. Thank you both for coming in. And thank you for listening to PBS Reno Arts. Support for this episode of PBS Reno Arts is provided by the Nevada Arts Council. Arts and creativity make us stronger, fueling innovation, prosperity, and thriving communities across Nevada. They boost our economy, promote well-being, and enhance education, empowering Nevadans of all ages. The Nevada Arts Council nurtures these essential creative forces. Together, let's elevate the arts in every corner of our great state. More at nvartscouncil.org.